So we have to get real here, my colleagues. We have to get real here. What I am going to circulate and ask colleagues to support at the appropriate time, I had a resolution last year to set a date. The date I saw is actually similar to the one put forward by the Iraq Study Group. It also happens to coincide with what the President himself said. He thought we could begin to have the troops out and the authority transferred to the Iraqis. So there's no arbitrariness to it. Now, I know my colleagues' discomfort with us setting a date. So I've changed that. I'm still for it, but I want to try to see if we can get something all together. And I will circulate and ask colleagues to support a combined reauthorization. And the reason for the reauthorization is very simple, folks. We gave the President the authorization for use of military force in Iraq pursuant to Public Law 107, specifically, number one, to defend the national security of the United States against the continuing threat posed by Iraq. That was specifically WMD and threat with respect to terror. Two, to enforce all relevant United Nations Security Council resolutions regarding Iraq. Well, we have a new Iraq, an entirely new government, entirely new situation. What I believe we ought to do is take our responsibility seriously with respect to the authorization of our troops to go to war. And that means reauthorize it in some form, whatever you think is appropriate. What I think is appropriate is what the Iraq Study Group suggested, and what ultimately the President said can happen if we transfer authority and the Iraqis assume it. So I would say that what we ought to do, rather than us being specific about the timetable, rather than sitting here and suffering the accusations we're being arbitrary, rather than us getting into a contest with the President over his authority, we make the authorization contingent on how those troops are going to be used to represent America's interests in the region, to represent our security interests with respect to Iran, to represent our interests with respect to chasing al-Qaeda, to represent our interests with respect to protecting our facilities and forces as they come out. But we also require the President to negotiate that timetable, together with the government of Iraq. So we require the President, he negotiates, we, excuse me, put a time frame on the period within which he must negotiate it, and we represent our clear interests in the region with respect to terror, reconstruction, and what the deployment of our forces would be. Now, I heard the word micromanage here earlier. Folks, how many families do we have to sit down with and listen to a mom or a pop tell us, you can't know how deeply I'm opposed to this war? And my son was opposed to this war. I've talked to those families who say that to me. How many times are we going to repeat that before we accept our responsibility to get it right, where this administration doesn't know or isn't willing to get it right? That's what this is about. So I will vote for this resolution. Now, with respect to Senator Dodd's number, I mean, come on, folks, look at the numbers here. Throughout the entire year of 06, you had a range of troops, 131, month to month, 131, 136, 151 in October, 142, 143, 133, 127, 130, 132, 132, 133, 139. Are you telling me we're not, you think 2,000 or 3,000 troops variable is the difference in what's going to happen in Iraq? If you're against this escalation, you ought to be voting to hold the level at what it was in mid-January, because that's how you prevent an escalation. And I think we're responsible to do that. The Iraq Study Group said in recommendation number 22, page 21, if the Iraqi government does not make substantial progress toward the achievement of milestones on national reconciliation, security, and governance, the United States should reduce its political, military, or economic support for the Iraqi government. We need to get as serious as they were, and that included 2 former Republican secretaries of state, 1 former Republican chief of staff and attorney general, 1 former member of the leadership of the United States Senate, Alan Simpson, and a host of other people who are known for their moderation and thoughtfulness with respect to security issues of our country. This is our moment and our time. and we need to be serious about it.
Chairman.